Welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little patron spinoff of the Legendarium podcast. We get together to discuss the books and topics our favorite podcast hasn't gotten around to yet. I'm Little Red Book, the lady mother of Num One Sun and Wave Boy. And today I have with me Cesky, the Lord Defender of Portal Fantasy.
Hey.
And we have his lady wife, who has deigned to come on our humble podcast.
Hello.
And another special guest, legendary panelist Stephanie, the Lady Commander of Secret Societies.
Hello.
Today we are discussing Shades of Milk and Honey by Mary Robinette Kowal. I don't know how to say her last name, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Take the sensibility of sensibility and the pride of Pride and Prejudice, add some magic, and we follow two sisters seeking husbands. One is beautiful, one wields magic. An old childhood acquaintance returns to the neighborhood, and a new neighbor's sister joins his household. Shopping, balls, and polite conversation ensue. Come for the gowns and stay for the social commentary. To start, how would you rank this book on a 5-star scale?
I could start. I would put this at a high 3.75 and above, and then low 4.25. So somewhere in there, it's kind of where it sits for me.
I would say I give it a solid 3.
Stephanie?
Oh, I'm in around the 4-ish area. I like the low 4s if I can do a point system somewhere in the low 4s. So.
Oh, man. I got such a different take. So first of all, before I give you my number, I want to say I loved this book. It was so much fun, and I loved reading it. It's a 2.5. It just is. It's fine. It's so much fun, but it's not great. It's just not that's just my feeling, and no judgment. If you loved it, I'm glad you loved it. I loved it. I'm just letting you know how I felt about
I mean, if you loved it, doesn't your enjoyment of it bring it up a little bit on the star rating there?
No. The end is, guys, the end of this book is nonsense. It's just complete 100% nonsense.
Most of the book is nonsense.
Well, yes. And it is what it is, and I love it, and I loved reading it. So, yeah, but 2.5 is all I can give it. Sorry.
Wow.
But, I think most books are between a 2 and a 4, so anyway. I'm judgmental. So what did you enjoy most about the story, and what did you dislike? I already said what I disliked. The end is nonsense.
So what'd you enjoy?
I like manners and stories of manners, and I like the aesthetic of the book. And I like
Is this manners? Is it like etiquette or manners as in like buildings?
manners as an etiquette.
Okay.
Like that whole aesthetic that especially Jane Austen is known for, but British literature is known for in general. I like the main character mostly, and I liked the love triangle. I thought it was well done.
Thought it was more of a love straight shot on my end. I knew immediately upon meeting the man that he was going to be the one that she ended up with. So
oh yeah, but it was
there was
still
no triangle for me. It was just a shot.
You usually know though.
I was like, you really are really good at picking out things like that. Because for me, this was my second read through on this book. So I knew the second time I read through it, but the first time I read it, I don't think I picked that up. I couldn't decide who she would end up with.
So what did you like about it?
I liked the magic aspect of it. It didn't really I wish it would have gone into a little bit more detail of maybe more, I don't know, logistics of the magic, a little bit more detail of that, but it was fun to read a Regency novel of with magic included in it. So that's what I really liked about it.
What about you, Stephanie?
I have to agree. I think the magic system was one of my favorite things, and for as many Regency novels as I have read, it was kind of a fun addition to a storyline like that. As far as what I didn't like, I think my biggest problem with this book was the development of the characters. I feel like the author just assumes that you've read Jane Austen and you understand how these characters are supposed to work and what the time period is and how the Regency period works with the hierarchy of lords and ladies and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like so she just kind of ran along those lines and assumed the reader knew what was going on instead of taking the time to actually develop the characters as far as their society and along that kind of stuff. I would have appreciated a little bit more in that aspect.
Yeah, so definitely Jane Austen obviously didn't explain her society because she was writing for her society. But I felt like the whole thing was just it was very tropey, like here's the beautiful younger sister and so yeah, I think I agree with you there.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I didn't like about the book particularly was that I felt like it followed Jane Austen too closely.
Yes.
Like the fact that she named her main character
Jane.
like yeah, like too similar for me right there.
it it really was taking Pride and Prejudice and then Sense and Sensibility and squishing them together.
Yeah.
What I liked, I agree, I did like the magic. I wish there'd been more, but I think there's more in the sequels. I liked that it followed Jane Austen a little bit more because having been forced to sit through like Pride and Prejudice enough, I had a general idea of where the plot was going, but it didn't stick closely enough that it was an exact like shot for shot of the book, and so that gave me the comfortable feeling that I had with it. That was it. But the things I didn't like was that, as weirdly as it is, Marie Robinette Kowal is usually very good about her word choice and her like keeping it concise. I just hated all the weird spellings that she threw in the book. The choose with the CHUSE, and instead of I showed somebody this, I shooed someone something. And I was like, I just felt inconsistent, and I really, really hated that part.
She did throw a
I
little
didn't
bit of
have
like French in there too.
Yeah, I
And,
just
the
didn't
younger
like
sister
that.
said la a lot.
Oh my God. I was like, Melody, just
That was
stop.
so
Just
weird.
stop with the law.
I listened to it, so I don't
I
know
did
if I
too.
picked up on all of that.
Yeah, well,
I did too. I didn't have to worry about the weird spelling. But the law thing definitely stood out. Oh, law, Jane.
yeah, I was like, why do you keep saying law? Like, you're not singing. Stop it. Just do what you want. And I don't like Regencies for the most part. I did like this one. It didn't feel 100% like a Regency to me as much, I guess.
Because it had magic in it.
Probably because it had magic in it. But I just get so tired of people being like, I didn't do anything today. Like, I just sat and talked. And I'm like, how did you get your money? Where did the money come from? How do you keep subsisting? Don't you care what happens to your property? Like, you just did nothing all day. And the dad's like, I sat around and went and bought dresses for my daughters. And I'm like, that can't be all you do all day, every day. I just
When you're rich, yes, it can.
can if you're rich, but how rich are they? We're just told they're rich. And I'm like, I want more details. Like, somebody has to be managing something, because otherwise you'll just spend it all and you'll lose it all. But that's me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you don't follow Regency novels enough to understand how they
God.
can sit around and do nothing and pay other people to do all of their work.
That
Yeah,
was such a brilliant rant. I love
in
it.
principle, it makes sense, but I just like, when reading it, I'm like, I want more details or more info. And the characters don't even know what they do half the time. They're like, I just have money and spend it.
So they make money off the fact that they own property and lease it
Right.
out to their tenants. That's where the money comes from.
I still don't like it.
Okay, fine. That's how it worked back then. So when you said that you watched Pride and Prejudice, was it the new one with what's her face?
No.
Or the
Keira
old one?
Knightley?
Yeah, or the older one with Colin Firth.
Watched it multiple times. I don't know which one it was.
Did you sit and watch an actual movie, or did you have to sit for 6 hours and watch a miniseries?
I think it was the movie, because I don't remember sitting for 6 hours.
I don't think I forced him through this.
Yeah, I don't think she forced
Oh.
me to 6 hour.
Well, that was nice of
'Cause-
you.
Yes, Colin Firth is more like a miniseries
Yes.
where it is a long haul watching it. Keira Knightley is a normal length movie. So
I was just curious. It doesn't matter.
No,
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Watch the one with Colin Firth. He gets out of a pond and his shirt's all clingy. That doesn't happen in the book, but
we have a Utah remake that's a modern day version of Pride and Prejudice that if you ever want a cheesy version of that, you can all watch Pride and Prejudice with the Pink Bible.
The Pink Bible.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So now we're going to move into spoilers because
You ran out of
as much
stuff
as
to
you
talk
care about spoilers,
How do you talk about a book and not talk about spoilers?
about.
I'm just saying. So if you care about being spoiled for this fun Regency romance with magic novel, stop now. But we all know what's going to happen because she's going to get the guy and live happily ever after because that's what happens in these books and that's why we read them. What was the most interesting? Well, let me try phrasing this differently. The most interesting thing about this book is how the sibling rivalry is handled and how the parents' interactions with their daughters influence the sibling rivalry. So, what are your thoughts about that? I know Stephanie wanted to talk about this.
Want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is my second time reading through this. I was recommended this book last year, so I read the entire series. Yes, by Cesky.
Yes.
He was the one that recommended, because after I said I enjoyed Regency novels, this was recommended to me. So this is my second time through. And I have to admit, the first time through, I don't think I paid as much attention to the sibling rivalry and their relationship, because I'm trying to understand the magic system. I'm trying to understand the other, like, more romantic relationships that were going on, and some of the other stuff that's happening outside of the main character. So this time through, I really had an opportunity to listen more about the relationship and the conversations that Jane has with her sister Melody. I happen to have an older sister. She is 5 years older than me, so I am the youngest, and she is obviously the older sister. I have a brother in between us, but that doesn't really fit into this dynamic. But this was very much like listening to me and my sister growing up. We were not good friends growing up. We were constantly, I always wanted to do everything with her because she was cool and she was older. And so there was this jealousy of my older sister that my older sister never really understood. And then we got into the point where we're both dating, and she has friends that want to date her younger sister. So they're making friends with my sister so they can get introduced to me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not as shallow as Melody. But man, I see a lot of myself growing up in Melody. And it kind of annoyed me because she's kind of an obnoxious character. But as I'm like listening to this and so as we got older, me and my sister, we're best friends now and we get along really well. Now that we're in we're more like on even ground in our lives, as opposed to me being in high school and her being in college and me wanting to date her college friends because college guys were cool when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
As legal as this is, I don't recommend this for anyone. It's not legal. Don't date college guys in high school. I do not recommend this. I do not. Anyway. Beside the point.
You're not giving life advice.
Yes. Completely off subject. But it was just really interesting going through. And now that I'm older and I have a better understanding of what my relationship with my sister was growing up, how I can kind of almost see myself in Jane now, thinking back on our relationship, going, oh my gosh, I was an idiot. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said those kind of things to my sister. I can't believe I treated her like that. And there's a weird jealousy that happens in siblings like that, when you have one that's talented or whatever, and you have one that's prettier, or one that does this, or one that's just smarter. And so I found that more intriguing this time through, following those relationships and going, okay, I can definitely see myself in these characters.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll go next, since neither Cesky nor Lady Cesky are talking. I'm the older sister. We're 14 months apart. And yeah, I really, really related to that relationship. I would not say my sister and I are best friends now, but we are at least friends. But I remember the phone ringing and it was always some guy wanting to talk to my sister and ask her out. And I could not get a date to save myself. When I was in high school, it was just but I had other talents and other things going for me. I think the worst thing that ever happened to me was when I came home from camp and my mom asked me if I could wear my sister's hand-me-down bras. Which was devastating when your little sister.
Very tangential.
Oh my God. So, needless to say, I identified with the older sister. But I also found it really interesting how the parents really fed into that rivalry. The way the father treated and my parents did this a little bit too, but it's a lot more, the book makes it a lot simpler than how it happened in my own life, and probably how any book can explain it. But the parents really fed into it, don't you think?
Yeah. I'll step in for a second. As a guy, I experienced no relation to the relationship there. My relationship with my brothers is completely different. Well, probably there are some things that were similar, but the parents, as I was reading that, like, they never said anything nice about their children to the attribute they never had. They never once like encouraged Melody to like try and like learn something or do something or practice. And they never once gave Jane a compliment about her beauty. They're always like, yep, Jane, sure would be nice if you were beautiful, but you're ugly as sin, so you better work hard, otherwise you're never gonna get married. And it's like, can't you say one nice thing about them? Like, yes, Jane, like, you're not the prettiest, but like, surely there's a guy for you out there, not like, hey, you gotta work extra hard because otherwise you're gonna live a spinster life. And they did. Every conversation with their daughters was like, you're beautiful, go be beautiful. Like, you have to get married. You're smart, go be smart. You have to get married. Like, nothing else.
In fairness, everyone was expected to get married. The men and the women were expected to get married in that society. You were not supposed to be single in general.
I'm not.
And as a woman, if you didn't get married, you better pray that someone's willing to take care of you because you're not going to be making any money.
Yeah.
And I know that's the Regency thing. I'm just saying, like, they had no, like, you're a person and your feelings matter. It was like...
These are not great parents.
Yeah.
They are terrible parents.
Yeah, they are.
I feel like across Regency novels, like, beauty is, like, the thing that they...
strive for?
I don't know. Beauty is, like, the main thing that they, like, focus on in a Regency novel. Like, even going back to Jane Austen, like, older sisters always, for whatever reason, the oldest sister is never the pretty one. It's always the younger sisters. So, I just feel like that's a theme across Regency novels, which was carried across in this book, too.
I think, okay, so in Pride and Prejudice, the focus isn't, they always talk about how beautiful all the sisters are, and they're all the most beautiful 5 sisters in the county or whatever.
Not really Mary.
Not Mary. Poor Mary. I felt so bad for Mary. Jane is like Mary plus Elizabeth, and she's not clever either. No, I mean, they definitely, at least in Pride and Prejudice, there is an importance on having skill. And that's one of the things that is a drawback. Not only do the girls not have dowry, but they haven't had proper training. And that's something that the people around them make comments about on a pretty regular basis.
Is that in Pride and Prejudice or this book?
Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
Which is, they're, they don't play and they don't draw and they don't embroider. And there's all these skills that they don't have that they're supposed to have.
But they're beautiful.
But they are beautiful. But what I'm saying is that that's considered a drawback to them.
Skills.
Yeah, not having the education that they should have. They don't speak French.
Because they need to be accomplished.
Right, exactly. Accomplished. Thank you, Stephanie.
It's the word that is used in Pride and Prejudice. A woman must be accomplished.
Right. It's not good enough to be pretty. Although in her books, you can make up for not being pretty by being accomplished. So what about the social demands that are made on men in this book?
Apparently the only social demand is to not be a loser.
I mean, that's kind of a social demand now, too.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the men, I mean, I didn't see any, like, real pressure on the men. They just spent their money and wooed women the whole book. I mean, Mr. Vincent, he has a lot of demands on him as, like, one of the best, like, artists, of the glamour, and that he puts that pressure on himself. But, like, he's not expected to go out and make money on his glamour. He just does it, right?
I think he's like the exception to this manly rule. Because he definitely does not follow the norms of men in this society.
But Captain Livingston, he does nothing but mooch off of his aunt and then his potential girlfriends. Mr. Dunkirk was fine. He just lorded around like all the rest of them. So, like, I didn't see, like, an exact, like, pressure for him to make money because he already has money. The skills he had were, like, horseback riding, and it wasn't like, oh, we need to follow this man, learn this skill, or, like, if he doesn't have this skill, he's a failure of a man. It was more like, if he's not proper, he's a failure.
So, Lord Vincent, or Mr. Vincent, has to give up he changes his name because his family's actually embarrassed by what he does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a fair social pressure, like the fact that he takes on a trade and...
Even as a third son, what he was doing was very looked down upon.
Right.
Like clergy and the queens, the military was really what anyone, not a first son, was going to do with their life. So for him to take up a trade was quite a blow to his family and kind of embarrassing.
Right.
But he
And
was
especially a womanly trait at that. Like,
I was gonna
Right.
say, I felt like the book made it a point to say that the glamour was more woman-oriented, with it briefly touching on, like, some of the better artists of the glamour were men, but it only briefly touched on that. So, but it was more of a seen as a womanly trade.
Well, and even for his job, like he was willing to give up his job to have a respectable lifestyle to marry Jane in the book.
right.
So it was obviously and very clearly something that was very embarrassing. So embarrassing that he did not want to tarnish Jane with his trade.
Well, but then in the end, I mean, she says, "Don't change your way, or I won't come with you," and so they still go out and do it anyway.
I know, but
So, I mean, it doesn't
I'm just
really.
saying that there is a societal pressure there.
I mean, the
And he
pressure's
doesn't make
there, but she rejects it, and he rejects it, and he's not bothered by changing
and
his name. He's
yay!
like, my family's super embarrassed of me, but I'm not embarrassed of me. So I didn't see the pressure on him. Like his family said, change your name or you can't do it, and he's like, cool, I'll change my name. And then he, went out and did what he wanted. So I didn't see it as much. That's all.
Maybe you would feel differently if your family disowned you for the job you chose.
Yes, I don't know. He could go back though. It felt like he could go back at any time as long as he stopped. So I mean, was that really disowned or just cut off temporarily?
I think being a fan of Regency romances, reading this one and what he did is a bigger deal, and understanding the society
Yes.
and the way that, like, having a more in-depth understanding of how the society works and what is expected of men and women wherever they are in society, how you do not lower your station, you don't go above your station, and like it is a fine line you walk living in this society, in the jobs you can do and the people you can talk to and how you have to conduct yourself. So I could understand someone who just doesn't really care for Regency kind of books, how some of these like characters would be utterly ridiculous, because they are really they are.
Yeah.
When you think about it through the lens of where we are in our lives, having someone being like, "Oh yes, I gave up my family name so I could go do women's work." Like, we're like, "Oh, great. Good for you." Where in that time period, he was looking at being completely destitute after living a very fluffy life with the money and everything. So I can completely, Chesky, understand where you're coming from, because these are ridiculous characters. But at the same time, having read several Regency novels and having a little bit better understanding of how the society works, like some of the choices that these characters make are a big deal. Like the idea that Dunkirk has killed a man because he ran off with his sister.
Mhm.
Of course, she was 14, and I can't imagine any older brother not wanting to kill someone running off with their 14-year-old sister. But
Yeah.
so it's just some of the stuff that happens in this. I'm like, okay, that's in the society. It makes sense, and I can follow where these characters are heading a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll fully acknowledge my weakness in Regency, because again, it's not my favorite. Like I did enjoy this one, like I said earlier, but on a whole, I do not read a whole lot of Regency, so I don't have the whole background and understanding. But
And the other thing I was going to add is he kept saying, well, he has money, but actually he's a third son. He's not going to inherit the property.
He gets nothing.
He's going to have a job.
so then, I mean, to that point, then he might as well start making a name for himself as Mr. Vincent, trying to earn money doing.
Yeah, but he's not being.
Because if he's not going to inherit, he has to figure out some way to get money. He
He
could go
needs
in
to
the
get
military, like you said, or join the priesthood,
clergyman.
the
Yeah,
clergy. But obviously, he doesn't want either of those.
But
Which is
that's
what
the way
makes
it
him a
was.
stronger character for deciding to go against society norms and following his passion or whatever.
It's like a Disney princess character.
Like a what?
A Disney princess character.
Let it go. Let it go. Okay.
Say something before we get to the next question. Is it normal? And it was weird to me that her mom kept doing these weird humble brags about being sick. Oh, I was so laid up in bed for 3 days. I was so sad. And Mrs. Marchand one time, I wrote it down, was like, I've been in bed for days because of that fright that you gave us. And I just had to pull myself up when I heard that you were feeling sick, and like, look how tough I am for laying in bed for 3 days and then coming to visit you. And I was like, what? I did not understand the whole like, I'm gonna brag about how sick I am, or like, it's the meeting of the hypochondriacs.
Well, that's exactly what it is. These women use their sickness for power. It's how they manipulate the world around them. It's how they control things. They make people come to them and wait on them. And you can see, like, that's one of the things that's really upsetting for me, about Melody's character is she starts to take this on. Oh, I sprained my ankle. Carry me to the house.
Yeah.
Sadly, I have done such something or other. Faked an injury. I have. I was in college. It was a low point now that I think back on it.
Point.
Girls do it, man.
They do. It's like the easiest way. It's that attention grabber. I happen to have a sister-in-law who I would probably claim to be on like as a hypochondriac, and that's how she gains attention and sympathy, and that's how like she lives her life. And I was like, it's a depressing way to go through life. And I have to admit, like the mother in this, she is ridiculous. She is beyond ridiculous with her antics, but it's also something that was kind of almost expected of women. Like, oh, you walked into something or other and you must swoon because that you're a woman and you can't emotionally, mentally handle this. So we're going to catch you because, I mean, they have fainting couches for.
I know. That's like, you're gonna admit that you were in bed for 3 or 4 days doing nothing. Like, I would never admit that if I was me. But again, I'm not a Regency character.
And you're also a man, so you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
Right, well, still, but like.
But it was like expected of women. Like that's why they had the fainting couches. That's
I need to go to bed. I have a headache. I cannot
Bitch.
stay.
Oh,
That would be so nice to go to bed just because I have a headache.
right. But
Please
I mean,
excuse me from dinner. I have a headache. Well,
the point is that you as a man in that society would not be able to do that. You'd be weak. However, that was a tool of power for women. It got them attention. It got them what they needed. Everyone would sit around and talk about, I don't know. It's like all the women were 90-year-olds because you know how old people get together and they talk about everything that's wrong with them. Except you were like that the entire time.
Then I know what the women do. Apparently they feign sick and do whatever they want and practice. What do the men do all day? Because as far as I know, Mr. Ellswood just sits at his desk and like reads the paper all day.
I'm sure there's numbers involved. Like
Probably.
so-and-so brought in this much money with their farm, and so brought in this much money with their farm. And I need to add these up. Oh, this one's not bringing in money, so I should go check on them. This is what they do.
Yeah.
Budgeting.
I wish I'd
All in the
seen
books.
a little bit more of a father or like Mr. Dunkirk actually do something beyond be a chaperone. But, I mean, I understand the chaperoning, but like Dunkirk,
Don't
just
chaperone
leaves
anybody.
and leaves and comes back, and it's like, where did he leave to? I mean, just like he could have said something like, "Oh, he left to go check on a farm that wasn't producing," and that would have explained it a lot more. Like, oh, he's taking care of it and looking at the owners or whatever. But it's not
I
about.
really think you definitely wanted a completely different book
Yes.
than this author actually wrote.
That's just what I normally get is that detail, and I just. I'm sorry. I'll stop complaining. I did enjoy.
So funny. No, I love this, but you are definitely looking for a book that this book is not going to ever be.
Can we get you and Ken discussing this book? Because
that would be amazing.
this would be fantastic. If I could get Ken to even read this book, like pick it up in general. I'm sure you say Regency Romance and he'd be like, no. But
I'd read it again with Ken. I don't mind.
That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Ken, can't imagine him having anything nice to say about this book.
Well, there are dueling pistols at the end of the book.
Yes.
Pistols.
And then she makes the whole world dark. And
Maybe not
then
the whole world.
Well, the whole area around them dark. And then the bad guy, for some reason, attacks her and gets shot or something, or runs away. I don't even remember. It made
He
no
runs
sense.
away in Mr. Vincent or Beth gets shot. I think it's Mr. Vincent gets shot.
Yeah, Mr. Vincent gets.
Yeah.
Speaking of social pressures, Captain Livingston cannot enter society again, polite society, because of what he's done. So there's that.
Oh no, it was Mr. Buffington that got shot because he owed him a lot of money.
Or stabbed.
I think he
I
got
don't know.
stabbed.
Maybe he got
It was.
stabbed.
It was. It doesn't matter.
It was
Guys,
dark. No one saw anything.
We didn't even see anything as the readers.
We don't know what happened.
Going
There
on
was some blood.
the book.
People got injured.
there was fainting and gunfire and darkness.
It was all very exciting.
Would like to hear a Ken recap of that whole scene. So Cesky, I believe this is your question. Do you agree with Mr. Vincent? Art should be viewed as art, final project, and not deconstructed into how it was made. Do you?
No. Sorry.
No, it's fine. You can go, Stephanie.
Do you want me to elaborate?
Yes,
Please
please.
do.
So I am not a paintbrush drawing like artist, but I am definitely an artist. And I love deconstructing things and knowing how they are done because I appreciate what's behind the curtain. I could definitely walk in and appreciate a gorgeous piece of art of whatever kind of art it is, music, theater. I mean, I tend to look at a lot of costumes and what people are wearing because that's my forte and what I'm interested in. And I can appreciate those, but knowing what went into it, what the time that it took, the energy, the thought process of where did this come from, especially when you're looking at an actual art piece and you're like, okay, is this a landscape of something? Like, where in your mind did this come from? I love knowing the background story. And I think it gives us as viewers a stronger appreciation for what the art is. I definitely think that there's a time and a place for it both, like where you can walk in and not want to immediately deconstruct what, especially with something like what he had just done. Go in, appreciate it for what it is, look at the nuances of the small details and everything, and then come back and then start looking at the deeper side of what it is. So
I agree with that. So I am a quilter, and I feel like the way that I learn to quilt better is by looking at other people's quilts and how they quilted them, how they put them together, what cutting technique did they use, whatever did they use? Did they use embroidery thread? Did they use regular thread? Just how did they put this together? And by seeing that, I feel like it helps me become a better quilter. So I agree. It makes it have more value to me that way. We don't particularly love going to art museums because neither of us are like major painters or anything, so we don't like super appreciate. I mean, I feel like I appreciate that skill on a very surface level, but like I'm never going to go recreate a landscape painting, and I don't care about I don't know. So maybe different types of art have a different value for me.
I
don't know.
Yeah, like she said, I don't really appreciate art as much as I probably should, but I walk through an art gallery and I'll just like 5 seconds each painting because I just don't care. I don't feel a lot when I look at art. I feel a lot when I read books, but not when I look at art. But so I agree with you guys that art, looking at how it was made enhances it. But to argue Mr. Vincent's point here, I think the people that he was, helping out or making this art for, I don't think they would have had, aside from Jane, like most of them would have had no real appreciation for the work or the knowing of how it was done behind the scenes. And so to them, it doesn't enhance it. And so he is so used to dealing with them, he's taken this, I want you to just look at the front because that's all that matters to you. You could look behind it and not get anything. Whereas other people could, but he hasn't dealt with them enough to like appreciate that part of it yet. But yeah, would love to deconstruct things more than actually view it themselves most of the time.
I think his main point, and I could be wrong, but my read on it was he wasn't done. And to have somebody come in and start poking around with his incomplete work is what made him angry. Maybe a little bit partially also she figured it out and he was used to being the smartest guy in the room. But I mean, I could understand being an artist and like, I don't want you to look at this till it's done. Like, we can talk about how I did it later. I don't know.
Really, you wouldn't want to
Guys,
talk about how it was done ever. Just like it's done. Look at the outside.
maybe. I don't know.
Well,
I
it
mean,
does to kind of argue that point when they're up on the hilltop and he creates the seer, whatever it's called.
The
And
obscurity.
she immediately turns around and deconstructs it and figures out how to do it. And he got mad because that was his thing. That was his little piece of secret or whatever. And the fact that she was able to figure it out. And I think a lot of it is that kind of not, he's no longer the smartest man in the room. I think there was a little bit of jealousy in that going, okay, if I don't allow people to look behind the curtain of how things are made, then I get to keep my own secrets instead of having to share them. And everyone else can just appreciate what I have done instead of sharing that knowledge a little bit. Because I don't think he really, it's not until the very end when he finally gives her his book of his secrets that I think he finally realizes. I think Cesky kind of hit it for me where, gosh, now I don't remember what you said.
Just that nobody appreciates like the hard work or the detail behind the scenes except for her. Kind of what I was.
Yeah, where it was the society just wasn't appreciated. Thank you for reminding me. I was like, I acknowledged what you said, and then for the life of me, once I started talking about it, I couldn't remember what it was. But that society wouldn't have appreciated all of the work that he did, so he would get upset if someone tried to meddle and figure it out. But then he found someone that was his equal. That once he realized that she was his equal, it was no longer an upset thing that he was willing to share his secrets with her, I guess.
I don't. When I was reading, when you read his journal, or when she reads his journal about her, deconstructing his obscuri right in front of him, and he starts really angry at the beginning, like, oh, she saw it and deconstructed it immediately, and then made a change, and then he's like, oh wait, but then I got inspired on my own from this, and so I think that's kind of like the start of like, yeah, he was mad because he's used to people not doing that, and she did kind of do a rude thing where she did it like right in front of him and was like, hey, look what I could do as well. And it's, I'm just as good as him. And, she didn't mean it, but he didn't know that. And then he was like, oh, wait, like, you can start to see it where he's like starting to turn in that instance where it's not just, oh, she looked behind the scenes. It's like, oh, I could see the betterness of that now.
Well, and also where they're doing the play and he's Apollo and she's Daphne, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she puts a slip knot in the thing with the glamour and the blah, blah, blah. Who knows? Like the magic system, I don't even care about. It's nonsense. Like a lot of this book, but that's okay.
All magic systems are nonsense. If you
Well, that's true. But what I'm saying is it's like, it doesn't matter that it doesn't make a lot of sense. So she puts the slip knot in, she slips the knot, and she turns into a tree, and he gets really inspired by that. And I think that happens right after the obscure thing, right?
Pretty close.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I think he has a reason to be irritated because she kind of embarrassed him, but then she does something really cool and then they work it out and it's all great. And then
it's like a Regency novel where everyone
like a romance.
Wow.
I like the romance, less the Regency.
I don't know. I don't know if I quite buy it, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
The romance is actually kind of cheesy in this one too. So
yeah. I buy Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth way more than I buy Mr. Vincent and Jane, but
yeah, I can get behind that.
They felt really similar to me.
Okay, so complain some more about the ending that wasn't an ending, Cesky, because I'm sure this is your question too.
Well, I put it in there. I was wondering how you guys felt about it because I know that there's a series. What I'm guessing happened is that she wrote it as a standalone, as she writes most of her books, and then was like, oh, it did really well, and more people want a lot more of them. I'll continue to write more, and then, wrote more. And she did leave plenty of room for herself there, because she was like, we're going to talk about the ending, but, like, there's plenty of other stories in another book that you can read. And so I was like, I don't care. I would have just cut that last half off and just been like, and they got married and walked into the sunset. And then there's the next book where you can read all about it.
Are you talking about, like, the ending part where she, like, jumps forward to the end of their lives when they're like old and sitting there? Or are you talking about the ending with the big battle and that's utter ridiculousness?
Yeah, well, I just didn't like the ending where she's like, they like time skipped where it's like they got married and then they lived happily and they did adventures and they did this and
Yeah.
that. And then it ends and you're like, and this is the end of their life and they're still super deeply in love, which is fine. Like I like that, but I'm like, could have just cut that whole section.
Cesky comes out against lifelong love.
No, I like
Right here on
This
the
whole
podcast.
growing old together thing is overrated.
I said the time skipping and the long skip to the end when you know there's going to be more books. If you know that, I just didn't like the ending. I mean, I like the ending, not that ending.
Okay.
How did you guys feel about it?
I understand what you're saying about the whole thing with that's a story for another volume, I think is how she puts it. I would have cut just that part and just gone to the end when they're sitting together talking to students.
I was like, it's a romance novel, so there has to be like a happily ever after moment. And I guess that was the happily ever after. I don't know.
What do you think, Stephanie?
I would have been fine with, oh, they got married
Yeah, I would have too.
and be done with it. I don't, because it does. It feels like she finished a book and this was the plan. It's a book. But oh, now I have followers and readers and people like this story. So now I'm going to pretend I didn't jump to the end of their lives and I'm going to tell you what happened. Not even to the end of their lives because I have read all of this series and it only covers like the next 5-ish years or something like that. And so it was weird to me that it was, I'm going to wrap up this story, but just kidding, because I want to make more money.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't begrudge her wanting to make more money, right? I don't think you do either. But yeah, it was a weird move to go with that, right?
Yeah, I would have
Yeah,
just ended it
was
earlier.
odd, for
Yeah,
sure.
here's what happened. So I have it pulled up right here. So they're like, oh, they got married, then they left, then they packed up some stuff, they visited the great houses, the other Melody got married, and then it's like, then their later career might seem strange, blah blah blah. Those other details belong in other volumes. All that is required for an understanding of their love is this small scene from their declining years. And then it zooms in on them and teaching the student, and it just felt like the weirdest perspective shift to me where we've been like tight following Jane the whole time. And then we pull back to this like narrator almost just for like this paragraph and a half. And then it's back in on Jane, right? That's
The only part that I would cut is that one part about in other volumes, that phrase
or
always be
skipping
around
to the
there.
end of their life.
I don't even mind that. I don't mind them skipping to the end of
Okay.
their lives and saying they all lived happily ever after. I mean, that's fine. But that
I just
one,
assumed that they died somewhere in their 40s and never actually made it to gray.
and they probably didn't have children and they were super unhappy. Probably the Black Death swept through,
Yeah.
killed everybody.
One of them died early. Yeah, it's not a pretty story. We're just gonna not tell that story.
I'm just saying that I get
This
what
is
you're
what she
saying.
should have written.
Yes. You hear that? You hear that? We're giving you notes. Mary, come on our podcast and defend yourself.
All right, I know Stephanie's read all the books. Red, are you going to finish the series?
Probably not.
Probably not.
It was
It's
fine.
only 5 books total.
If I get in the mood, sure, I'll pick up another book. What do you say?
I think I read to the 3rd book and then I was bored.
Mm,
So I don't think I
I
finished
like
the
they
series.
so she goes actually into more in depth on some of the magic system, which I like in her later books.
Yeah.
Because though, Little Red, you think it's nonsense, I actually really liked this idea of this magic system. Like, I think it would be cool to pull things out and enhance life, I guess, with the way that they can make wind blowing through these portraits. And I think for that time period, this would have been so cool. Maybe not in our technology filled world where, like, I feel like Harry Potter over here because Ryan has like this live action like photo frame of us like waving like Harry Potter is. Like, so maybe not so much in our time period, but in that, I think it would be cool to being able to add details and artistry and enhance the world. I probably would not be very good at it though. So,
so
but I
when
really I enjoyed the magic system.
So when I say it's nonsense, what I mean is it's not like a hard system. Like it's all very ethereal. It doesn't really have I
Sorry.
don't I enjoy the magic system too. It's a lot of fun. But what I'm saying is it's like there's not these hard and set rules like if you're reading Allomancy and Brandon Sanderson. Not that it's nonsense as in that it's stupid. It's just like this, like Gandalf says, you shall not pass.
I
And
was
that's all we know
excited
about
for
the
a little
magic.
more magic, but when I read the next of them, I'll get it apparently, and that's kind of what I figured. So
Of course, in a first book, you want really that explanation early on. You don't want to be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, in the
Yeah.
third book in the series, you'll actually get a detailed explanation of
Yeah.
how the ether actually works and what they are pulling. Not that that's even true, to be honest with you, because I don't think she ever, like, she explains it a little bit more as the two of them work together.
right,
But
Right.
that's the magic system is never
yeah, it's never
fully
that hard.
explained as to what it is. So
Yeah, I thought it was just a decent explanation anyway. They pull from the ether. You can fold it off. You can make this. You can make that. I'll save my
Good.
complaint for what they could use the magic for in fact, to be more productive. But making pictures move is fine too.
they talk about the coldmonger that
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
can
they make
actually
cold
keep
and they
things
make
cold.
wind. Like
There are
that's
people with jobs.
yeah. No, and that's what I said.
They can make it dark and confuse a dueling thing that is happening at the end of the
very
book.
specific.
And they do discuss why it's not useful in like military aspects because
Yeah.
it gets set in places and people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to walk through that now. Like,
Right.
It
No,
takes
I understood that. I just had a lot of other thoughts about things, and I won't bring them up.
Well, tell us what the best use
Oh, I
of this
don't know. I
magic.
mean, I just thought like, oh, it'd be so cool if they would like just show other uses for it beyond like painting. And I really liked when they go to the dress shop, and she's like, here's what the dress will look like on you, and a little mini version of you, and you can
I
make
loved
dance
that.
and
That
sing
was
and
fun. That
twirl,
was
whatever.
very
And
fun.
I thought that was a really awesome practical use of it. I just didn't.
And
I
she
wish there was more of it because it was like, oh yeah, I'll make the picture have wind in its hair. It's like that's cool, but it's not like super helpful in like a work environment, which is not the story. And I know what it is, and I'm not, you know what I mean. I'm not like looking for it more because I know it's
He
not
wants the cobbler story in the village
Right?
that's right by their house that
Yeah.
has to still use this magic system, but actually lives a real life with a
Right.
real job.
Yeah,
You are
no, I
not
mean,
interested in the Ton that's going to Bath. You're not interested
right.
in that.
No, I mean, I thought the art was cool, like when he makes the big forest scene in the house and everything, and I'm like, I appreciate that because that's what they're doing. But I'm like, I also want to just see these other practical uses that would get used because if people have it, they're going to use it for smaller, more practical things as well.
You do see it a little bit more in other books and some
Yeah.
of the challenges that using it, because I do appreciate some of these magic systems when they give it a flaw or a weakness
Mhm.
where it's not like, oh, well, I can pull from the ether and I can do impossible things with it and I can use it forever. No, you have a set amount of time. And as soon as you use it for too long, you're going to start making yourself sick. You're going to start really putting yourself at risk. And I appreciate having a flaw in the magic system that has to balance out being able to use it for certain things in
Right.
their day-to-day lives.
Reward thing, if I use it, is it worth losing that time of using it later? Yeah. So
And they use it for practical things too, not just the cold.
Eavesdropping. I mean,
It's very practical. I mean, you need to know that stuff when you are in society. But also, she just like summons a wind to cool off her sister when her sister faints and stuff like that. So
yeah, that
Chesky
would be
needs to
one of those
write
practical uses.
Chesky needs to write some fanfic about the cobbler down the road.
I will
Yes.
not write fanfic. Thank you very much. There will never be a day, most likely, hopefully, where you see a piece of fanfic with Cesky as the author name. So, do you want to say anything?
Okay, last thoughts. What would you recommend? If you like this book, what should you read?
Apparently, you should go read some Regency romances. So,
Pride and Prejudice.
I'm actually reading a different. You would know what I'm reading. He gives me the book, I read it.
oh
and
yeah,
then
she's
I'm
reading.
actually reading another book series from her that I actually love a whole lot better than this one.
The Lady Astronaut series.
So,
Sounds fun.
I don't know. That's my random recommendation. Totally not Regency romance, but
That's okay.
she definitely, I feel like, writes a lot better in that one. Like the voice of the book is a lot better, and there's a lot more detail that I felt was lacking in this book. So,
Is it a romance?
Yes. It's a husband-wife romance.
Well, that's nice. That's
Yeah,
great.
you don't see
You
many.
can have romance in a marriage.
Yeah, I was like, you don't see many husband-wife books, so it's kind of like a breath of fresh air almost. So, I don't know.
I think that's great. What about you, Stephanie?
Who is you?
Josh? Which one of you? I got one of you. I have one that I can
Okay,
recommend.
you go, Red, and then I'll go.
Okay, so I thought because Cesky recommended this to Stephanie, I was like, oh yes, you should definitely read this book. It's perfect. But then I started reading it, and I realized I had never read this book before. It was a different book that I had read that I confused with this book, and I finally figured out the name, and it's The Magicians and Mrs. Quint by Galen Beckett. So that's what I'd recommend: magic and Regency romance, and I'll share it with you in the DM, Steph.
Good, because now I don't have to write. Because yes, I was recommended another book that I'm currently in the middle of, which I don't think actually has anything to do with this one, but I am reading A Natural History
Of Dragons.
Dragons.
of Dragons. Yeah, by Marie Brennan. She
I've
was
not read
at
that
Jordan
yet.
Con, where we were at last weekend. And so I got to meet her and sit through her Q&A. And so Jafu is actually the one. We sat down to lunch with him and his wife and a couple of other our Discord listeners. And that's what he recommended to me and Megan specifically. So that, I don't know, it's not really, I'm not very far into it, but it doesn't feel like that same like romance novel, but it still feels like it fits into the Regency time period of the society and what's expected of society, and especially women in society. And I love this because it's definitely a woman breaking the society norms of that era because she wants to study dragons. But so I'm only like a fourth of the way into it, but it kind of feels society wise in that same realm of a book.
Right.
This isn't a book I don't think I would recommend to a lot of people. Shades of Milk and Honey specifically. Like,
Oh, I'd recommend this to a ton of people. I already have.
I just don't know anyone. I mean, when you think
Oh.
about the people I hang out with, like that I converse fantasy novels with, yeah, Ken Johnson, go read this book. Just so I can hear you complain about
You
it.
know, what's so funny is that I'm on this episode and was also on the action movie episode.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He just recorded with you guys, didn't he?
He did. It was fun.
I remember. So
Okay.
that's my only thing with this book is I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. I loved following their story, especially once they were married and everything that happens within their life over the next few years. I think is really I think it's a better story personally, I guess, than this first one. But I have a hard time thinking of who I would recommend this specific book to.
Handa and Lady Sweden and Miralay. I
I just
recommended
don't.
it to them.
I don't converse with you guys quite as
I
much
know. I'm
as
just teasing
you all do. So I could recommend something and be like, yeah, you should go read this. And they're like, you don't know me at all, do you?
That's okay. I do that all the time.
Yeah,
just
you
recommend
recommend
it.
everything.
Well, I like everything. So I was gonna say,
Except Worm.
that one you
And-
have to have a certain person for. So
And A Christmas Carol. You didn't like that either.
it was. I mean, it was a long, quite boring book.
Just I'm just giving you a bad time. Just
You
don't
can
worry
go
about
read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did
that's
listen
fun.
to you guys talk about that one. So. But I think just
How-
listening to you guys, I got the whole story, so I'm good.
Yeah. The movie's kind of fun if you haven't seen the movie, but
No?
Oh, I didn't know there was a movie.
yeah, it has Lily James as
I don't want to
Elizabeth.
see the movie. I just didn't know there was one.
It's actually quite funny.
Oh,
There's
is it? Okay.
some moments in it that are quite funny in that. The zombies.
Okay.
It's the zombies that make it interesting, really.
Maybe I'll keep it on the back burner.
Yeah. But I don't have
It's
any
like, oh, what am I going to watch today? I don't have anything. I'm just going to turn on Pride and Prejudice and Zombies because it's a zombie movie.
Chesky, recommend a book. If you like this, you should read.
a book that you find by going to Google and searching Regency Romance. I'm sure you'll find a good one. I could recommend to you all the other books I've been reading this week, but I don't think they really match with this tone for the most part.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first. This concludes our episode. You can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. The invite link is on thelegendarium.com. We are also on Twitter at Green Team Pod. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thank you, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your media empire, and for Horizon Brave for starting this all. Music is Galactic Damages by Jingle Punks. Thank you, Cesky, Lady Cesky, and Stephanie. Have a good night, everybody.